Welcome back to the hashtag Go With The Flow series. This is going to be video chapter 6. And I think this will be the last one of the introductory series. And then we will jump to a different series of talks where we are planning now on doing something different. And we will get to that next week. So in this chapter, it's going to be a short one. And we'll just go over a few more nuggets in interpreting flow cytometry. We will go over 2 cases slowly so that we are revising how we approach B-cell lymphoma. And then I will leave you with a quiz case, which I will answer at the beginning of the next video. But you can leave your answers in the comment section below or on Twitter, wherever you found this thing. So moving along. Remember I told you one of the easy ways to identify whether B lymphocytes are a tumor is their clonality. And on the right, you can see this red blob right here is going on to the kappa side of this diagonal. So that's how is probably an easy way to interpret kappa and lambda. You look at the diagonal. If you're on this side, you're kappa. If you're on this side, you're lambda. And you can see this red blob clearly monoclonal going on to the kappa light chain side. But there are cases where this may or may not be as straightforward. And we will see an example here. So this is a lymph node from a middle-aged woman. And let's see, so we have, let's do the blue population first. So it's a nice reference population, small to medium size, not much site scatter, so not very granular, looks like lymphocytes. And now the blue population is CD19 positive, and it's CD10 negative, look like a B lineage marker here. Again, CD19 positive, we knew that, and it's CD5 negative. It's also CD20 positive, so definitely looking like B cells. The CD38 is partially positive here, or variably positive. CD23 is also partially and variably positive in the blue population. And the blue population seems to be predominantly negative for FMC7. And the blue population is also forming 2 nice clusters, one in kappa, one in lambda. The kappa to lambda ratio when done was 1.7 to 1, looks all normal, looks polytypic. So this is a good population to interpret as polytypic mature B lymphocytes. Now what about this red population? So, small to medium size, wants to be a little bit larger maybe than these blue B cells. CD19 positive and CD10 positive, nice cluster there. CD19 positive and CD5 negative. CD20 positive, but distinctly brighter. So if you look at the mean of this population, sits clearly above the mean CD20 fluorescence of this population. So bright for CD20, brighter than these polytypic B cells, and also bright for CD38. So it's like a nice little cap on top of this B cell population, brighter for both 20 and 38. Entirely positive for FMC7, seems mostly negative for CD23. And then you got this blob action going on here. Doesn't cleanly split into kappa or lambda. Seems like most of the cluster is bending towards the kappa side. And so in a case like this, just looking at this kappa cluster, you may be tempted very easily to think of this as a monoclonal kappa light chain restricted population. And if indeed it was a kappa light chain restricted population of small B cells and then CD10 positive, you would be thinking of follicular lymphoma as your diagnosis, right? Now, so it is important not to quickly jump to that conclusion because you're seeing this streaming of cells. You're seeing streaming lambda, streaming kappa, similar to what I showed you in hematogones, but in this case, it happens to be in reverse. Instead of gaining kappa lambda, these cells seem to be losing it. Remember, these are CD20 bright cells, so they're mature B lymphocytes. And so anything that's CD20 bright should not be dead negative for kappa and lambda. So if this population was just sitting here, then you would be fairly confident that's a tumor. And again, that would be a follicular lymphoma. But the fact that they're streaming from positive to negative, There is a normal population that you should be aware of that does this. And it can, that particular subset of B cells can have, typically does have, a kappa light chain bias, can go even up to 3:1, 4:1 type ratios. And that population is of germinal center cells. And it turns out that germinal center cells show exactly this phenotype. So they are CD10 positive, right? If you remember lymph node stains that you've done in follicular hyperplasia, those cells in the center of the follicle, they clearly stain for CD10. They are CD20 and CD38 bright. FMC7 is thought to be a marker of full germinal center differentiation, so that fits. And they tend to be slightly kappa biased, but clearly, again, they are polytypic. They're on both sides. And so in cases like this, it's important not to jump to the conclusion of a lymphoma. Again, if this was dead negative, that's extremely aberrant for a CD20 positive, bright positive population. Now, if it was CD20 dim or into the negative, then again, dead negative could just mean immature cells. But the fact that these are CD20 entirely positive, we should not allow them to be completely negative for kappa lambda without being suspicious or without it indicating a B-cell lymphoma. But in this case, this is a classic example of follicle center cell. This is germinal center reactive follicular hyperplasia. Okay, so that's one principle that I wanted to communicate. Sometimes you'll see this and it may not be as easy to pick up on a monoclonal population. So this is not one, and it's a polyclonal reactive follicular hyperplasia. So the flow equivalent of what you would see under the microscope of florid germinal centers all over the lymph node. So that's one. Okay, so let's do two cases, two simple cases. This is actually just another example I want to highlight here. Here the follicle center population outnumbers the regular polyclonal B cells and again forms this blob, but clearly streaming both on the kappa side and lambda side. So be careful of these cases, that's the point. Okay, now let's do two relatively straightforward cases. And we will just go over population by population and apply our principles, okay? So the green, I can just tell you it's CD5 positive T lymphocytes. They're not shown here for some reason, but these are just your T cells. They're negative for all the markers shown. This was more of a B cell panel. The blue cells, CD19 positive, CD5 negative, CD20 positive, CD10 negative, so clearly B cells. And then the money is in looking at their kappa lambda. They're splitting very nicely into kappa lambda. Let's assume this was a normal kappa lambda ratio. So this is a nice background population, CD19 positive, 38 variable, variable for CD23, variable for FMC7, polytypic B lymphocyte. So that's a nice reference, small lymphocyte population in the blood of this 55-year-old man. Now we come to this red cluster. Again, small cells, right? Small lymphocyte size cells. It's CD19 positive, but also CD5 positive. Interesting. CD20 positive, but dimmer than these blue cells, and CD10 negative. We're also CD38 dead negative. We're CD23 positive, but FMC7 negative. They're kappa positive, but dimmer, and lambda negative. So what are the principles we apply? First of all, those three questions, right? In addition to cell size, we always ask for what? We ask for what is the lineage? Is it mature or immature? And then is it normal or abnormal, right? So first let's do lineage. What is the lineage of this? It's expressing CD19, that's a B lineage marker. CD20, that's a B lineage marker. CD23, B lineage marker. Kappa light chain, B lineage marker. So very strong evidence of this being a B lineage population. It also expresses CD5, that's a T lineage marker, but not a specific one. So we are pretty comfortable that this population is of B cells. Now, is it immature? Meaning, is this an ALL or hematogones, normal hematogones? Or is this a mature population of B cells? And the way to determine that, we don't have CD34 TDD. This was probably negative for it, probably not even done in this case. But the fact that it's expressing CD20, that's a nice maturation marker. Surface immunoglobulin is a maturation marker. And we would have CD23 is a maturation marker that goes against these being immature. And then also we would have done CD45. It's not shown here if it's nice and bright for CD45. So these are the types of markers within B cells we use to determine maturity. This seems to be a mature B cell process based on surface immunoglobulin CD20, CD23, but not CD19. CD19 can be expressed quite brightly. It's a pan B cell marker right from the immature stage. So it's a mature B cell. Is it normal or abnormal? And clearly in a B cell case, this is easy. It's kappa light chain restricted. This cannot be normal. And it's also showing some aberrancies, clearly CD5, completely positive, dimmer for CD20, dimmer for immunoglobulin. So this is not a normal, this is a tumor. Okay, I'm purposely going slowly because first we should reach that conclusion. Now that we have reached the conclusion that this is a mature B cell tumor of small cell size, the next two antigens we look at are CD5 and CD10. We now know this is a CD5 positive. So back to our favorite differential, this is either a CLL, SLL, or it's a mantle cell lymphoma. And we resolve it right here. The fact that it's CD23 positive and FMC7 negative gives you the diagnosis of a CLL, SLL. You would also look at CD200. Nowadays, people are also adding CD79D, excuse me, to the panel. And we will discuss those special markers when we go over thematically in the new series of video lectures where we would tackle cases and discuss them. So that's how you go about a case. We'll revise this one more time, and then I will leave you with a quiz. So here's again the next case. 72-year-old, again, peripheral blood. Looks like peripheral blood hardly has any granulocytes, almost completely a lymphocytosis. The green population is a nice reference population of T cells again, CD5 positive. So that's your small reference size. So your red population is small to medium sized, CD20 positive, 10 negative, CD19 positive, clearly shifted over for CD5. You'd have to compare it with some controls, but this is CD5 positive. Doesn't have to be as bright as the T cells. This is a B cell population that's expressing CD5, CD20 positive, CD38 partially or variably positive. Now here, this population is clearly FMC7 positive, but CD23 negative and kappa light chain restricted. So again, lineage B, 19, 20, kappa, FMC7. Mature or immature, again, mature for the same reason, CD20, surface immunoglobulin, FMC7, and probably CD45, right? So we got that. And now normal or abnormal? Abnormal, because kappa light chain restricted. So in that context, we are back to again looking at, so we know it's a B cell lymphoma, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. We're back to looking at CD5 and CD10. Again, an example of a CD5 positive, 10 negative case. So what would we look at? We would look at FMC7 and CD23 next. And here's the opposite scenario where it's FMC7 positive, but CD23 negative. And so this is a great example of a mantle cell lymphoma. We will go into detail of CLL versus mantle. Probably that could be our first set of cases for the next session, where we will go over some other markers you can look at. And also it's important to get a more definitive study. You would probably order a FISH for T1114 to look at that translocation. If you had a lymph node, you might be able to do a cyclin D1 stain and so on. So we will get into all those details, but this is how you would approach a flow cytometric finding and come to a conclusion of a case that is a mantle cell lymphoma. All right, so in this short and sweet session, as I promised, I'm going to leave you with a quiz case. So I'm not going to say too much about it, except what's written on the left. This is a 17-year-old boy. A bone marrow specimen was drawn for evaluation. And I've already given you the answers. The green population is granulocytes. The blue is mature B lymphocytes, polytypic, as you can see in the surface kappa lambda. The black is the monocytic population. The key thing for you to look at here is the red population. stare at it on every dot plot in great detail. You can pause the video here and look at it, or take a screenshot, or however you want to do it, and then come to a conclusion about the diagnosis based on this red population. Let's say this population quantified at 8%. Let's say we had 8% of this red population in this bone marrow. Go over it carefully, and you can send me your comments below here in YouTube, or you can put comments on Twitter or wherever you found this link. All right, so that's it. Thank you, and look forward to seeing your comments there.